Hello and welcome to our video of Streets of Rage 4. This is going to be kind of like a let's play with some commentary from me. So I've been playing the game quite extensively over the last few weeks. There's already been a review on the site which you can check out, written review, but I figured it'd be nice to do kind of a visual representation of it as well, because the game is just so visually striking and it's brilliant. I mean, it's one of my favourite games this year already. It's got a bit of everything. It's kind of like the visual aesthetic is really stunning, the soundtrack is incredible, and honestly it's just amazing to be back in this world all these years later. I still can't quite believe we've got another Streets of Rage game, which is absolutely crazy to imagine when all these years ago, but here it is. And yeah, so let's have a play through the first couple levels. Here we go. Yeah, I mean, Streets of Rage feels like this franchise that could and should have been brought back all these years, over the last 26 years. There has been some false starts with that as well. We've seen some concept art over the years of failed attempts to bring back the franchise, but it's just never come to be. And now obviously you've got the game from Lizard Cube and Guard Crush Games, and obviously .emu who have actually published it, and SEGA are sort of semi-involved in it as well now. So this is a huge collaboration between multiple teams to bring this iconic franchise back to life. Of course, as you can see at the front there, you've still got Axel and Blaze at the centre of it all, as well as it should be. But you've also got a few new characters in there as well, like Cherry and Floyd getting involved as well. So this first level is just going to feel so reminiscent of the classic Streets of Rage vibe that you're used to. Obviously you can see there you've got Axel in his garb. There's bin bags all over the place, there's rubbish recycling, there's neon lighting, there's guardrails, there's manhole covers, and in a second, once I'm getting a bit used to the controls, you can see some nice fire punches there. Once you see all that, you can actually start to see some of the enemies in the game. The thugs will look incredibly familiar, like this guy just coming in here. These are like, when you see these guys, you immediately think Streets of Rage, right? Because they just look and just act like the people you've been punching and kicking all these years. Same with this guy in the yellow trench coat. You know, this is the sliding guy that really used to irritate everyone from Streets of Rage 2 and just kind of take the feet out from underneath you. And it's just really cool to be able to fight these foes once again, but in much more glorious high definition. And I mean, the hand drawing for this game is just so immediately striking, and it suits the game so well. I mean, if you think about like the original Streets of Rage games, I mean, these were 16-bit games on the Mega Drive. So, I mean, bringing this franchise back, I mean, obviously there had to be a huge amount of work would have had to have gone into that. Determining the visual style would just be such a big challenge. And there's a lot of documented information on the internet about that. If you haven't looked into it, it's well worth doing. The amount of, drawings and iterations and evolutions that these characters have gone through over the last process of development is just, it's astonishing. It's really well worth looking into if you haven't already. I think one of the other really catchy things about this is the soundtrack. The soundtrack is exceptional. It's so reminiscent of exactly the kind of Streets of Rage vibe that you're used to and you've seen from and heard from the franchise in the past, and it just works so wonderfully well. And for me, it's, yeah, I mean, if you're not a fan of the soundtrack, of course you can revert to the retro soundtrack if you want to in the menus. That's a really neat little option in there, so you can kind of make it sound like the good old 16-bit kind of audio style. But I think what's been accomplished here, the different kind of the instruments that they use, the kind of the feeling, the grittiness and the upbeat nature of it, the techno kind of layers to it. There's just so much going on, and it works. It really does work. I mean, for me, it was an odd one coming into this, because Streets of Rage 2 it's not just mine, it's many people's favourite game of all time, but this is one of my all-time favourite Sega Genesis games. I mean, it's one I would come back to time after time. It's a game I would still play even now. I mean, there are some 16-bit games, there are some 8-bit games which haven't really aged very well, let's be honest. Streets of Rage, I always found, was not that game. The third one was a little bit tetchy at times, but certainly the first two games were my favourites of all time. Absolutely loved them. And I'm not quite sure what it is. I mean, it was the simplistic nature of just being able to use weapons, the different types of weapons, the different enemy types you'd come against. Obviously, the characters are all slightly different as well. As you can see, Axel from this is a real bare-knuckle brawler, as he always has been. He's a bit, not particularly, he's not the most athletic character, but he's still extremely, brutesque, and he's very physical. And it's just, he's weighed down compared to a Blaze or a Cherry, as you'll see in a bit. But, for me, that's just something about this game that I just absolutely appreciated more than anything else, was just how everyone feels so different, how weighted Axel feels compared to Blaze, everyone has their contribution to make in this game. Everyone feels unique and special. So yeah, absolutely. I think playing this game is it's important to kind of get a feel and to understand that Streets of Rage can be very different, and it still feels incredibly different from the past, but also it pays homage to these great characters in many other ways as well. And I think it's a real testament to what Lizard Cube have achieved here, because I don't think, for those who don't know, Lizard Cube actually also recently brought back a Wonder Boy game, The Dragon's Trap, which, if you absolutely love this visual style of Streets of Rage, you absolutely must check out The Dragon's Trap. It's exactly the same, and the same love, care and attention has also been provided to Wonder Boy the Monster Trap. So, I mean, if you've been impressed with what they've done with Streets of Rage 4, absolutely seek out Wonder Boy, because it's just as fantastic, in my opinion. And I think what is quite interesting about Streets of Rage, going back to that, is I feel Lizard Cube have, with Guard Crusher and also with .mu, have actually managed to revitalize the side-scrolling beat 'em up, because it's one of these genres that hasn't really had much love, care and attention over the years. There's been evolutions of it, and I think it's kind of gone the 3D route a lot more, but certainly this is kind of like this 2.5D recreation of this classic franchise. It feels so significant now. And I feel like, to me, everything about this game just feels like a new beginning, and it feels like from this there are so many games I'm just thinking I would love to see recreated. I would love to see new installments in these franchises. Like, I think there's been a lot of talk about people, these Lizard Cube actually recreating the Teenage Turtles in Time beat 'em up from the SNES era as well, which for me again was one of my all-time favorite beat 'em ups, alongside Streets of Rage. So yeah, I'd be all for that, absolutely. But perhaps even just allowing Lizard Cube to be more involved in doing sequels to more Streets of Rage games, and maybe other iconic side-scrolling beat 'em ups like Final Fights and things like that. I mean, I think this has really set a precedent, and I think it's certainly created more of an appetite for these games in the future. So I'd be very excited to see what comes of this going forward. And it was always huge shoes to fill. I mean, I don't think there must have been such incredible trepidation to create a sequel to Streets of Rage 26 years later. I mean, that's a huge amount of time not to have a new installment in the franchise. I mean, it's funny how people have talked about how we've been waiting for Half-Life 3, but actually, I mean, you look at kind of like Streets of Rage, fans have been waiting longer for this, which is astonishing to think that people have always sort of summarized like Half-Life being the game that didn't get the sequel that people deserve. But Streets of Rage have waited longer, and it's astonishing that it has taken this long, because for me, when you play this, you think to yourself, why has it taken so long to bring this franchise back? I mean, there's an arguable point. If Sega had maybe brought a Streets of Rage 4 for Dreamcast, all those years ago, could that have been the franchise that, brought people into Dreamcast? Could this have been the kind of the IP that it needed to really get people invested in buying that console? because there was obviously there were issues with sales of the Dreamcast, and obviously it was the last console that Sony ever did. It was the last console that Sega ever did, and it's a sad time. But you think that Sega had so many fantastic intellectual properties which have been brought back in recent years, like the Sonic Mania, for instance, that you wonder why that happened. And if they'd had those right teams working with them there and then, and with the same love and passion for these franchises that these teams clearly have, who knows what the Dreamcast could have been? Could it have been a precursor to an even bigger console down the road? We just don't know that. But what I'm so grateful for is whatever this incredible journey that Streets of Rage has had, it has led us to this amazing sequel, which... I've spent a lot of time. I mean, you see in this single player, me playing single player here, but I've spent a lot of my time playing this in co-op, whether that's online, playing with other people, or playing with my partner. And I've just, it's like being, a 13-year-old kid all over again. I'm blown away with how good this actually is, and how much I miss this franchise. I think that can't be understated. I mean, it's all well and good, recreating a like-for-like game in some sense, but I think there was clearly an appetite here, and you can see that from the response online that this game has had. That people really wanted this back, and they really wanted to play this type of game again. So yeah, Lizard Cube have really just absolutely smashed it. You can see there the environments are still as tricky, Axel getting electrocuted. The cool thing about this as well is that each environment has really had a lot of effort put into it. There's a nice little Lizard Cube Easter egg there. I don't know if you noticed back a little bit as well. You can actually see Mr. X is RAP Mr. X, which is a homage to the original games. Of course, in this game, you're actually playing as an offspring of Mr. X, so that they're not trying to say, Mr. X is back from the dead, and etc. etc. They've created new big bads in this. They've created new enemies, but there's also that familiarity that you'll know and love about Streets of Rage. And of course, as you've seen as I've been playing here, there are the sub bosses which you're used to from Streets of Rage, and of course now we're up to the first main boss, Diva, on the first level. So and these bosses are really tough. The first level is a nice challenge, kind of gets you back into it, but the second level, which you'll see momentarily, is it's ruthless. And I think that's another cool thing about this, is that the Streets of Rage 4 has enough difficulty levels that anyone can play and complete the game. But I think there's enough here for hardcore fans who clearly over the years, people have been mastering, still playing Streets of Rage, doing speed runs, doing no-hit runs, all these different types of playthroughs of a game that's, years and years old. And I think what has been crafted here is something that lends itself to those different play styles. And I think Lizard Cube have understood the community very, very well when they've been making this game. So, and there's obviously lots of unlockables, which you've probably heard a bit about. You get new there's the battle modes arena where you can basically fight against one another. You can use the retro sprite characters, so if you don't like this hand-drawn style for whatever reason, you can use the old school retro sprite characters if you want to. I think for me, this is a game with a lot of fan service, but it's also a game that kind of understands the significance of trying to set the tone for maybe the future, because ultimately I think what we all want to see from this is more Streets of Rage games, and hopefully Lizard Cube being at the forefront of making those games, and hopefully that will come to pass with this. I don't know, who's to say? We might be waiting another 26 years for Streets of Rage 5. Hopefully that's not the case, but I think the cool thing I've really felt when playing this is that there is a lot of respect shown to people who've waited for it, like me, since Streets of Rage 3, but also people who probably have never even played these games before, or played them when they were at their peak, and now have gone back to them as retro enthusiast or first time players, and they've recreated this for a new generation now. And I think that's the really exciting thing about this, is that there's a lot of respect paid, while there's also a lot of opening of new chapters and new doors for whatever the future may hold for Streets of Rage. See, I've just knocked the boss down here, stage 1 clear, so a bit of my skin on my teeth there. And this is just on normal difficulty. I mean, I don't need to show you how awful I am on the higher difficulties. But yeah, you can see there, this is just a well-made game. Everything you know and love about Streets of Rage is there. I mean, you can see from one level. I've just decided I'm going to try and play Blaze now. And you also get these cutscenes kind of sewing everything in between as well, like kind of like a comic book style, which kind of sets the tone for the story, which isn't the best story in the world, but I don't think, again, the games were never really known for their story as such. But there's enough here that kind of keeps you interested, and there's some nice fan service for characters when you unlock them throughout the game as well. So I won't spoil that, but yeah, definitely pay attention to those cutscenes. They're good fun. Yeah, you can see her playing Blaze. So, as I've mentioned, she's a lot more athletic than Axel. But also uses a lot of suplexes. So, something I love about the original games is the use of kind of wrestling moves like suplexes and slams, and they just feel like they've got so much more power to them and punch. And like Blaze's snap suplexes and the judo throws, and it really just lends itself to that character. But yeah, she's a lot more agile than Axel, certainly. But I think she's a nice balance. So for me, I've actually enjoyed playing as Blaze probably more than any of the other characters in the game, because she kind of has the strength of an Axel, but obviously not as strong, but she's very strong, but also has that athleticism. So you've kind of got the mix of the two there. Yeah, now this is quite an interesting level I found as well, because you as a player, you can actually decide. There's an ongoing war between the police and the thugs, right, in this, and so I guess you can kind of pick and decide, right, I'm going to take down the police officers first while they beat up the thugs. But you're seeing a background war going on as you'll come up to it now, so you can see what I'm talking about. So that thug is being laid into by the cops there, but so I've kind of broken that up. But there's actually, you'll see this ongoing war between the thugs and the cops is going on while you're wandering around. So you look at that, you got the brawl there. So that's really interesting little tweak that they've added in here. They've kind of made it so these characters feel alive, and they've obviously done the familiar thing of naming these characters, giving them kind of a bit of their own their own personality. So yeah, this Barney guy's pretty hard going actually. He's got a taser gun in his hand, and he'll literally come half across the screen, grip you, and then taser you to pieces. He's pretty ruthless actually. Again, just appreciation for the soundtrack. I love it. Really, just such a big fan of what's been done here. I think for me, as a beat 'em up fan, I think there's years of gameplay for me to come here. I mean, yeah, okay, you can breeze through the story mode quite quickly if you do it on easy and you just want to just blast through it. But I think if you want to go for the higher difficulties, do all the unlockables, the battle modes, play with friends, play online, which is actually semi-stable, though I did find it's a little bit jittery on PS4, we'll just say that. But I think there's enough here to keep you coming back and keeping playing the game. Certainly for challenging yourself and just keeping everything fresh and interesting. And again, playing with each character provides different bonuses. They've all got their own special attacks. You just saw Blazes then. So I think you really, when you're sort of playing this through, you kind of, everything feels quite different. Like I actually, when I'm playing now as Blaze, I feel like it was very different to when I was playing as Axel. So that's something as, again, is a real testament to how Lizard Cube have balanced this. Oh, these guys are such a pain in the ass. Probably my least favourite enemy in the games, with their shields, because you've basically got to take their shield right down, but their shield will, if you don't keep hitting the shield, it will keep recharging, so you've got to try and sneak them from behind, and but when you get their baton, it's pretty much easy, plain sailing. So. Take a beat in mind. Notice as well the chain attacks. So if you can literally keep on attacking without being hit, you get a nice combo, and that adds to your bonus, and you can earn extra lives by doing the combo bonuses and things like that. But also, like, you collect the money there, as you've seen, so you also get a nice little bonuses from that. But the aim, of course, is to try and get the highest possible score, take the least amount of damage as you can, and you should earn a lot of lives as you're going through. It's easier said than done though when they're swarming you from all sides. And you've got enemies like Mr. Shield Man over there, Mr. Mega Man wannabe. I love something else I really love about this is the background detail. I mean, if you look at those billboards, look at the eagle there, and you've got the syringe, the big warning sign through it, and the computer screens and the water coolers. I mean, just the attention to detail. And that's something for me. I actually probably stand on some screens for too long because I'm just wanting to observe and look and take it all in, because it's so damned impressive how they've just put it all together. But I mean, Streets of Rage has this really nice steady introduction of new thugs, a stream of familiar foes, so it's blended in well with new enemies. I mean, you've got this guy with his hands in his pockets who's like the most casual Joe you can ever expect to meet, but then he starts having these really flashy kicks which take you by surprise a little bit. But then you've got the diverse spread of environments, like you're in this police station, you've come off the streets to this police station, and it's just it really is. It's just lovingly detailed and well presented. Yeah, see, these can be quite a challenge. Nice. Bit intense. Had to concentrate a bit then. So that's what I meant about the taser guy. Lethal. Absolutely lethal. Let's find out. Take his taser. Oh, no. Got punches. Take his taser and some of his own medicine. But it's nice again, the diversity of weapons. I mean, obviously, you saw the knife earlier, which you can still throw at enemies. The old lead pipe, the iron pipe, which you can still smash enemies with. Another neat little thing you might not know, actually, you can change the food. Obviously the franchise has been known for major turkeys and as old as it is, but you can actually change it to salad bowls. You can have a big burger and fries. You can have pizza slices, which I thought was a nice little neat touch. But it's funny. So I mean, obviously there are people playing this who are not necessarily meat eaters, so they think, well, I wouldn't eat a big massive turkey if it was sit there on the ground, but I might eat a big bowl of noodles or something, so Lizard Cube have even thought of that, which I thought was quite a neat little adjustment to the game. That is really hit hard. You just wait till you see the boss of this area. So level 2 is a challenge. It's a real step up from level 1. And it really kind of sets the tone for the game, because this is a tough game. It's not easy going on you. So even on easy difficulty, it can be quite a challenge. So don't expect to come into this, and blast through it. But again, that's what these games have found on. Streets of Rage 2 was notoriously a tough game, as was Streets of Rage 1. So I think you need to kind of be aware that this might be a tougher challenge than you're expecting. But again, I like that you can change your character in between the levels. So if you're aware of what each level's challenges are, perhaps you can find a character that's more appropriate for those levels. And it's odd because I found by using certain characters, like for instance, if I've used Blaze on level 3, she can actually do a really good job of flying through those, whereas Axel might have perhaps been better suited for fighting through these armoured drones. Then again, Snap Suplex is not going to do anyone any good. yeah, I think it's quite a tactical game in that sense, you know. So here we go. Here's boss man. So get ready. Oof, pretty ruthless. Punching for the table there. So this guy, literally, he does these massive punches that go the entire length of the screen. He hits hard. He will literally grab you, throw you into stuff. This is not a nice dude. And then his buddies also jump in for a bit of fun as well. So that's always not a pleasure. As you can see there, I changed the pizza slice and the burger there, as you can sort of give you an example what that looks like. So it's quite fun. Got a fun little thing you can do. But I think that's one of the cool things about this, is little subtle tweaks as well, that, you know, a little bit of them, like, there are obviously the nuances and the things you can see when you play the game normally, and you can see what adjustments have been made, but there are also little things in the menus that perhaps you may not notice immediately, and over time you play it, these things you come back to think, hey, actually this is amazing. Like, actually I'm rewatching this as I'm playing it. I'm actually paying more attention to the background at the moment and seeing, you know, the bridge, you know, we're going in the background of this, which is it. And then there's the boat, which is kind of like a precursor to the next level. But also this guy's got his golf clubs in the corner of the room, you know, and there's a basketball shirt at the top there. So all these little cool little details, and it tells a story about this character, I think, because obviously this is a big muscular police commissioner who's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder, and you know, he's quite happy to slam you around and, you know, pound you into oblivion. So, you know, he's clearly quite sporty, quite athletic, but also a bit of a drinker, I can see there as well. So it's funny how, you know, I've mentioned this isn't really a game that's based on story, but art can tell you so much about, you know, what this character is and what his kind of motivations are, and, you know, his interests. It's fascinating. Oof, tough one indeed. But again, you know, fantastic soundtrack as well. I mean, beautifully done. And I guess to kind of just round up my thoughts on this, it does enough with the old classic gameplay you know and love. Modernizes it with aesthetical choices and, you know, aesthetical changes like the combo system and, you know, new weapons and different balancing between different enemies and different characters, and it all just kind of blends itself well into making just what I think is as good of a sequel as we could have hoped for. Actually, I think it's better, because it's more than a worthy successor and sequel to the Streets of Rage games, and I think those who've been waiting all these years for this game I think most of them will be very happy with what's been achieved here. I certainly am. But that's going to do it for this video. Hope you enjoyed the first couple of stages, seeing some action with Blaze and Axel. Please go and pick it up. If you love Streets of Rage games, you won't regret it, I'm sure. See you next time.